wear something green, and including green and gold here because I'm getting close to Lambeau Field, closer than Appleton is anyway. And well, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight and blowing off all those big parties you could have gone to, drinking green beer and everything. I just was wondering if you've heard the story about the Irish magician. Yeah, he could walk down the street and turn into a bar. It's my kind of magician. Okay, well, you might be wondering, well, why am I up here talking about right to work? What makes me so qualified to do that? Well, I used to be a member of the Teamsters Union back in the day. I worked in a warehouse, and Teamsters are not just truck drivers, but they're also warehousemen. It's the brotherhood of, drivers and warehousemen and truckers and this and that. So I was in the warehouse, and I had to join a union to be working in that warehouse. And then a while later, I had a job with Riverside Paper Corporation in Appleton, and I had to join the International Brotherhood of Paper Makers. So I had a couple of union jobs, a couple of union memberships there. And I didn't go to the union meetings every month, but I did make a point of reading the newsletter, the monthly newsletter. And in the case of the Paper Makers newsletter, there was always a message from the president on page 2, and I would always read it because I think, message from the president, what's he going to say, what's he got to say to the members, how does he justify the union's existence, whatever. And I remember his name was something like Roselli, and he was from New Jersey. And about a year after I left employment there, I was reading in the news, and I ran across a news item that he had been busted for racketeering. I'm thinking, well, okay, I've been a member of 2 unions. Jimmy Hoffa, we all know what happened to him.
Not really. No.
What happened?
The conventional wisdom is, if you've seen the movie Hoffa with Jack Nicholson, and then the other guy, less well known than Jimmy Hoffa, but also mob connections. So I thought, what's going on here? So I decided to look into the matter a little further, and around that time I got something in the mail, just I thought, this is almost providential. It's from the National Right to Work Committee. And so I thought, what the heck, I'll join and I'll learn what they have to say. And I've been a member for like 40 years. And I've been waiting 40 years for this state to go right to work. And finally, it happened. I actually lived long enough to see it happen. And I'm happy to say that I was a part of the process. I went down a couple times to Madison to give testimony, and that was kind of an adventure. And so I'd like to share with you some of that, along with what I've learned over the years about right to work, what it means, and why I think it's a good thing. So I'll start out by saying that, believe it or not, the concept of right to work is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was drafted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948. Now, I know your first reaction is going to be, hey, the United Nations, bad. Well, the United Nations isn't all bad, isn't totally bad. I don't think any organization is totally bad. In this case, also, I like to be able to use a source, an authority, so to speak, that liberals look up to, and I can use that source to hammer the liberals down. Like here's an outfit that you hold up as something wonderful, but they're saying that labor unions are not that good, that the right to work is better. And Article 23 says, everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. Everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. Notice what Article 23 does not say. It does not say that labor unions or trade unions have the right to force workers to join it. But of course, the labor unions don't want you to know that. Now, the right to work principle simply affirms the right of every free American to work for a living without being compelled to belong to a union or any other private organization for that matter. Compulsory unionism in any form is a contradiction of the right to work principle and the fundamental human right which that principle represents. Every individual must have the right but must not be compelled to join a labor union. The right to work is neither anti-union nor pro-union. It is simply a matter of individual freedom and individual choice. The right to work principle affirms the right of all Americans to work where they want and for whom they want without coercion of any kind to join or not to join labor unions or to support them in any way. Unions are, after all, private organizations. No other private organization in America insists on having the power to extract financial support from unwilling people. Okay, we know that a labor union is a private organization. But what kind of private organization is a labor union? Is it a fraternity? Is it a business? Is it a charity? Or what? In any case, there is a crucial distinction between labor unions and all other forms of private organizations. Labor unions use coercion in attempting to get what they want. No other form of private organization is allowed to force people to become members and to force them to pay dues against their will in order to get a job. It's like you got to pay a bribe or something in order to be able to work someplace. Okay, so how then do labor unions play their role in the economy? What's their justification for existing? What is the true nature and character of a labor union? Well, according to, if you go to the dictionary, here's what the dictionary says. A labor union is an organization of workers formed for the purpose of advancing its interests, the members' interests in respect to wages, benefits, and working conditions. Okay, let's break this down and connect the dots. Point 1. In order to succeed in holding an organization such as a labor union together over the long term, a labor union has to be able to deliver on the claim that it will obtain a better deal for the members than they would receive by themselves in a free and open market. In other words, the labor union comes to you and says, join our group, pay some dues, and we'll be able to give you a better deal than what you're getting from your employer on your own. Okay, point 2, how do they do this? How do they make good on that promise? The only way of accomplishing this is by controlling the supply of labor available to an employer. In other words, the labor union tries to set up a labor cartel, just like OPEC, oil cartel. The whole purpose of the organization is to control the supply of oil. Labor unions try to control the supply of labor to an employer. This is what one of the guys who was giving testimony down in Madison said in support of right to work. He said, a labor union is just a labor cartel. And I was sitting in the overflow room, surrounded by all these hard hat guys, labor union guys, who were wearing their hard hats and their colorful lime green and orange vests and their steel-toed boots looked like they were either going to work or coming off the job or whatever. But just by sheer numbers, they were there to try to intimidate anybody else who, like myself, was there to speak up for right to work. It was easy to see who was who. The right to work guys generally were wearing suits and ties, but I showed up in just kind of a military kind of looking shirt with a pair of black jeans, and most people didn't quite know where I fit in. In fact, when I was sitting in the gallery among the labor people, they thought I was with them, and they were like, "Hey, you getting hungry? You want a granola bar?" I go, "Okay, sure." So I stuck in my shirt, and then their teeth practically fell out of their mouths when I got up and started talking about right to work. And so when I was sitting there in the overflow room, and I was hearing this guy on the closed circuit TV talking about labor unions are basically a labor cartel, there was a couple of people who goes, "What? Cartel? Cartel?" And I thought, well, Duh! Do you understand what a cartel is? The whole point of a cartel is to control the supply of something in order to control the price. Specifically, to drive up the price. Okay, point 3. How does the labor union do this? How does it control the supply of labor to an employer? It does this by preventing non-members, non-union members, from having access to the employer. In other words, the union sort of builds a wall around a pool of workers and tells the employer, these are the only workers you can hire. Anybody outside the union, you can't hire. And the fourth point is, when there is a contractual agreement between a labor union and an employer, the employer agrees to hire only members of that labor union. Okay, so now we can see what labor unions are really all about. Labor unions are not organized against the employer. They are organized against workers outside the union. In other words, they're actually organized against the little guy. Labor unions say, oh, we're for the little guy. Oh, really? Let me ask you a simple question. When was the last time you saw a labor union trying to organize the unemployed? Who could be littler than the unemployed? Those are the ultimate little guys. But is the union trying to help them? No. The union isn't interested in the unemployed. Why? Because the unemployed don't have jobs. Unions are only interested in employees, guys who are already working, because that's where the money is. The money isn't there among the unemployed. Okay. I mean, after all, why would a union try to organize the unemployed? To take jobs away from the guys who are already employed in the union? Of course not. The unemployed are actually like the enemy. Why do you think a picket line exists? When a union goes on strike, do you think that picket line is there to show everybody driving by, hey, we're on strike, honk if you love the union? No. That's not what it's about. That picket line is there to intimidate all the other workers, the unemployed workers, from trying to come into the plant or the business and apply for a job. It's as if the unionized guys think they own that job. They have no more right to that job when they walk off that job than they had before they took the job in the first place. When you walk off the job, you are in effect, you're quitting. You don't have a right to that job. I mean, if you're not willing to work for 15 bucks an hour and somebody else is, why shouldn't that guy have or that woman have the job? You've already voted. I don't want this job. You know, strikes would actually have a useful purpose if you took away the picket line. Because then, if the guys walked off the job en masse and a bunch of people came and applied for the job, those guys couldn't say, we're underpaid. Because a whole bunch of people just came rushing in to take the job for the same wage. But if they walk off the job, go on strike, and nobody shows up to take their place, then yeah, then they could argue that we're underpaid. And then the company would have to come across with some money. But otherwise, no. Picket lines, strikes, the way it's set up, no picket lines. That's not what a free and civil society is supposed to be about.